online every morning. It's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question.
That's two questions, actually. That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
On radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
with honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Very good morning, everybody. It's Monday the 16th of May. It's just gone at 10 a.m. And this is, of course, To The Point with me, Patrick Christie, and Mercy Muroki on your TV, radio and online. Loads to get stuck in to today.
And I've got a bit of a sore throat, so bear with me today. We are with you until midday, as usual, discussing the day's biggest stories with our expert guests and asking the questions you want asked and even giving our opinions.
Yes, that's right. Over the next 2 hours, we'll be taking a look at everything from the Queen to the race equality training in universities to bankers, that's right, bankers, getting unlimited annual leave.
Yes, that and much more as well. So get in touch and tell us what you think on our email, gbviews@gbnews.uk. And that's all coming up after this quick update on the headlines with Rosie.
A very good morning. It's just coming up to 2 minutes past 10. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date on GB News. Now, Boris Johnson is heading to Belfast today to hold emergency talks with Northern Ireland's leaders. It's in a bid to try to break the current Stormont deadlock. The Prime Minister's threatened to override parts of the Northern Ireland Protocol through new legislation in Westminster. He wants to do that despite warnings from the EU it would breach international law. The Assembly's been plunged into crisis in the wake of local elections, with the DUP refusing to join a devolved government. Well, that's in protest, they say, over post-Brexit trading arrangements and the protocol, which the Irish Foreign Minister said today must remain.
Well, clearly the situation is urgent. That's why the Prime Minister is going to Belfast, to get round the table with all the parties involved. We are seeing an impact now on Northern Ireland. All parties, I think, are agreed that the protocol in its current format doesn't work. And that's why we need to continue these dialogues and find the way through this.
The Home Secretary has permanently lifted restrictions on the stop and search powers used by the police. It's part of the government's strategy to tackle violent crime. Priti Patel's given the officers now the right to search people without reasonable grounds in an area where they expect serious violence. It gives police power to preemptively look for weapons before they're potentially used in a crime. The wider use of stop and search has become controversial over concerns that it disproportionately affects black and minority ethnic communities. Sweden is going to send diplomats to Turkey today in an attempt to overcome Turkey's objections to it joining NATO. The Scandinavian nation is expected to make a formal application to join the military alliance today, bringing to an end 73 years of opposition to the move. Finland confirmed yesterday it would also be applying for NATO membership. Ukraine says troops defending the country's second largest city, Kharkiv, have fought through Russian advances and now reached the state border with Russia. Well, it suggests a Ukrainian counterattack is having increasing success in pushing back Russian forces in the northeast. Ukrainian military, though, says there is no let-up in Russia's bombardment of the steelworks in the southern city of Mariupol, where hundreds of fighters are still holed up. Footage released by pro-Russian separatists, but not verified, shows munitions falling over the Avastol steel plant. More than 8,000 migrants have arrived in the UK after crossing the English Channel this year. That's more than double the number recorded for the same period last year and more than 6 times the amount in 2020. The Home Office say it will begin the process of informing the first asylum seekers they could be flown to Rwanda under its new resettlement scheme, with flights expected, the Home Office says, in the coming months. A statue of Baroness Margaret Thatcher has been egged less than 2 hours after being erected in her hometown in Lincolnshire. A protester was seen throwing eggs at the memorial shortly after it was lowered into place in Grantham yesterday. Lincolnshire police say they've received a report of criminal damage. No arrests have been made. 1 in 4 people with dementia have symptoms for more than 2 years before they're diagnosed. The Alzheimer's Society suggests the signs are too often dismissed as simply old age. They've produced a new checklist with the Royal College of GPs to help people identify symptoms. That list includes memory problems, becoming withdrawn and getting lost. Children's physical activity levels have fallen below national guidelines since the COVID pandemic. Using data from pre- and post-lockdown, research from the University of Bristol found that by the end of last year, only a third of 10 to 11-year-olds reached the recommended physical activity guidelines. They estimate those children were doing around 8 minutes less physical activity a day than before the pandemic. The Queen has received a standing ovation on the last day of the Royal Windsor Horse Show. Her Majesty smiled as she arrived at the arena in the grounds of Windsor Castle. The audience were cheering as she walked towards the royal box. She arrived at the show last week, having previously missed the state opening of Parliament due to mobility issues. Well, the 4-day-long equestrian event celebrated the Platinum Jubilee celebrations, marking the monarch's 70-year reign. Well, as we head towards the Platinum Jubilee Bank Holiday weekend, drivers are being warned to expect congestion. Over 130,000 UK roads will be inaccessible because they're hosting street parties. Well, the breakdown rescue firm Green Flag say around 8% of adults live on a road hosting a council-approved street party over the 4-day bank holiday, and Friday is proving to be the most popular. You're up to date on GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's head back to the point.
Good morning. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Moroki, and Patrick Christie on your TV, radio and online. Coming up this hour.
Her Majesty the Queen was warmly cheered and given a standing ovation last night as she actually walked to her seat at the first of her Platinum Jubilee celebrations, where she was pictured laughing and smiling all evening. We'll bring you the latest on that, as well as the less cordial reception Prince William received at the FA Cup final.
Yes, and a mass shooting took place on Saturday in New York State, leaving 10 people dead and 3 wounded. An 18-year-old man has been charged with murder and is reported to have live-streamed what police understand to have been a racially motivated attack. Security expert Will Geddes will join us to discuss far-right nationalism and gun laws.
Indeed. And finally, celebrities and influencers are calling on the government to do more to tackle cyber flashing. So this is the sending of unsolicited nude images. But is it going to the government to do the right thing, or should they actually be going to social media campaigners instead?
Yes, we have all of that coming up and much more as well across the programme. As we say, we're here till midday with you, and you can get in touch with your views, as usual, on our email, gbviews@gbnews.uk. But first, Patrick's going to give his views on Eurovision.
Now, I normally start the shows by getting stuck into the biggest political stories of the day. And of course, today is no different. Eurovision. Yes, Eurovision is an absolutely massive political story because Eurovision is basically singing diplomacy. Yes, we've had some absolutely shockingly bad entries over the years. But the reality is the voting is always political. Everybody knows that. So therefore, Britain winning the jury vote and coming second overall has to be political as well, doesn't it? And you can bet your bottom dollar that if we got the classic nil point, then the Guardian and the Remainer types would have been jumping all over it. This is Brexit Britain, isolated, unpopular, the loner of Europe. Look what you've done. Right, OK, fine. Sneering at our national failure, revelling in it. Well, to quote a certain prominent Brexiteer, you're not laughing now, are you? And I wonder what they would make, frankly, of Germany receiving nil point. You hate to see it. France, second bottom for the vast majority of it. In short, I think the main thrust of this is that your 5,000 helmets don't go down as well as missiles, armoured vehicles and intelligence support with regards to a war on Europe's doorstep. I actually got back from quite a large night out and turned the TV on expecting to see us languishing at the bottom of the leaderboard, Union Jacks barely fluttering in the hands of increasingly depressed British delegation members who yet again had received a giant 2 fingers from our European friends. But no, the TV flashed on. The UK were in pole position. I was initially worried about how much I had to drink, but no, it really was real this time. This was really happening. And then, the unthinkable. The French delegation awarded us 12 points. Cue mass hysteria. The drink went flying. The late-night kebab got flipped onto the floor. Chants of, "It's coming home," rang out around the house as I celebrated it like Luke Shaw's goal in the Euros final. Unfortunately, of course, like the Euro final, we lost it after extra time and penalties. But it doesn't really matter. Sam Ryder did this nation incredibly proud with a great, great song. And I don't want to take anything away from his performance, which was incredible, and his amazing personality and character. But we do all know that Eurovision voting is often political, as I've said. Cyprus giving Greece 12 points, etc., etc., etc. And I don't think it can be any coincidence that the UK taking a leading role in helping to defend Ukraine from Putin's marauding hordes, looking good and strong on the world stage, looking statesmanlike, compensating, frankly, for other European nations' inaction, contributed to our vote. And, of course, on top of that, coming first in the jury vote, we came 5th in the public vote overall, which is not a bad return, is it? Brexit Britain is not a social pariah. Turns out it's very popular, and long may it last. It didn't quite come home. It almost never does, but nearly.
Yes, I mean, I have to admit I didn't watch it. I'm not a Eurovision person. I don't think that surprises anybody. So I didn't watch any of it. I was looking at it on Twitter. I was on Twitter. Every single tweet I was looking at. And bearing in mind the people I follow on Twitter are political, political nerds. Not least our very own Tom Harwood, of course, who was very enthusiastically tweeting about it. Everything on Twitter was about it, so I couldn't avoid it, and I was almost following it in real time on Twitter. But again, I assumed we'd just come last like we always do, because that is always the headline after every Eurovision contest, whatever.
Contest, yes.
But no, we didn't. And I think you're right, that this shows clearly, socially, culturally, we are perhaps being more accepted and more revered than we might have previously been. And I do think our performance with Ukraine in terms of the government and helping with the war has had something to do with it.
It absolutely has. It absolutely has. And I think as well, when you look at things, it's not just that, but things like the way, frankly, that we dealt with the vaccine rollout and stuff like this. Britain, I think, has covered itself in rather a lot of glory. And the only reasons why I would think maybe some things would be relatively inglorious is the repetition and the kind of dragging down of this nation by some members of our own media, frankly, over things like Partygate and trying to drag it into the gutter. But I do think that the vast majority of the continent of Europe now sees us as being stronger than it did, frankly, when we were in the European Union. And I do think that this has a massive, massive part to play. Ukraine, of course, deserve winners. Another little point to note as well is that, look, fingers crossed, the Ukrainians send the Russians packing ASAP. But Zelensky, the Ukrainian leader, has said that he wants to hold it next in Mariupol, which I think is a tad ambitious.
Well, maybe not next year, eh?
Maybe not next year. So we might then host it next year anyway. Yeah. So, look, well done all round.
Yes, well, some other good news. The Queen attended the final night of the Royal Windsor Horse Show last night, walking to her seat and seen smiling and laughing throughout the show. Held in her honour, it was called A Gallop Through History. Well, the show marked the beginning of the Platinum Jubilee celebrations to mark the Queen's 70-year reign. The event organisers were hoping she would
actually attend. But, of course, after the Queen missed the opening of Parliament last week, concerns were growing that she would miss this event too.
As well, in fact, her appearance was not confirmed until the 11th hour when the Queen emerged to a standing ovation, one she very much deserved, of course. And here to give his royal opinion is royal commentator Raf Hadel Manku. Let's start with the Queen. I know there's some other royal stuff going on with Prince William and getting booed at the FA Cup final. But we mentioned there, you know, she didn't turn up to the state opening of Parliament, first time in, I think, 5 decades or something. She hadn't done so. It's fantastic to see her out and about again.
Yes, I think there would have been a collective sigh of relief across much of the country as we saw our Queen yesterday, in fine form, actually, as she attended quite an extravaganza at the Royal Windsor Horse Show to celebrate her Platinum Jubilee. And, of course, she was in her element there because she loves horses. There were 500 horses there, 1,000 performers, the star-studded cast, including Dame Helen Mirren and Catherine Jenkins, and naturally, of course, Tom Cruise, because when you think of the Queen, who automatically doesn't think of that diminutive doyen of Hollywood?
Yes.
But she absolutely loved the occasion. And the day before, when her daughter, Princess Anne, had seen it, she said that her mother was absolutely going to love it, and she got quite emotional about it, actually.
Yes, yeah. This also reaffirms this thing lots of people have been saying. She's not ill, she's old. Let's not forget she's 96 years old. She's in... You know, she's doing an incredible job, still working, still out and about. She's not obviously in a wheelchair, which there was some speculation she might do that. This almost lifts the mood of the nation and helps us prepare for the celebrations we're going to have in a few weeks' time.
That's exactly right. We have to remember the Queen is 96. Yes, she looks rather more frail than we're used to seeing her because we haven't seen her that much in a while. But a 96-year-old person who's not able to walk so well is not in ill health. We have to understand that. She's perfectly capable of fulfilling all of the functions of the Crown, except for those, of course, that require lots of standing or walking. And so this is a good sign, I think, just to hope that we may see her on the balcony and attending her service of Thanksgiving at St Paul's Cathedral.
Yes, well, this is it. So, look, just before we move on to the slightly more negative elements, like the Prince William stuff, just fill us in on some of the order of events that we're going to get in these Jubilee celebrations coming up. So you mentioned St Paul's.
Yes, so we got on the 2nd of June, we've got the Troop in the Colour, which is the Queen's official birthday celebration, which is going to have a 6-minute fly past, an extended fly past of the Royal Air Force, including planes that have been involved in many recent initiatives, but also the Battle of Britain Memorial Flight is quite a remarkable fly past on this occasion. And then we're going to have, after that, the service of Thanksgiving at St Paul's Cathedral. There's going to be a party at the Palace concert with various celebrities appearing there. And, of course, the big Jubilee lunch, which will be a huge party. And there will be, of course, we know more street parties taking place this year than there were for the Golden Jubilee or the Diamond Jubilee. So I think that's a great positive sign.
Indeed, it definitely is.
And just quickly, before we move on, where, you know, you're an expert on these things, where is the place to be then? Because, as you mentioned, there's so many events taking place. Some people will be wondering, well, do I go down to London and enjoy everything that's going there? Or actually, should I stay local and enjoy the big street parties that might be happening?
Well, again, it all depends on your abilities as well. But for me personally, I think there's nothing more iconic than being in the Mall and standing there to see the Queen come out onto the balcony. It's such a special moment. And to see the planes flying over, you'll have the red arrows with the red, white and blue powder coming out. And it's really one of those memories that you will always remember. And if you have children, bring them, because they'll tell their grandchildren about the day they saw the Queen.
Very good point.
Anniversary.
Yeah. Very good point. An iconic day in British history. But, look, I was very, very disappointed, if not, of course, surprised, that our future king, Prince William, appeared to be booed. I think the national anthem really appears to be booed as well and combined with me. So basically, they're booing everything. It must predominantly be said, and I really, really, really do not want to kind of invoke the wrath of the Liverpudlian population here, because I certainly don't want to do that. And I was from Manchester, which is not a million miles away, and Northerners do, in my opinion, and should stick together. But it did appear that most of the booing came from the Liverpool section. What did you make of all of that?
Yeah, well, that was a much less joyous event, unfortunately. There's a history in Liverpool of booing the national anthem. Well, I should say of some Liverpudlians, some Liverpool fans do this at the Cup final at Wembley. Their flawed logic, I mean, it's a disgraceful act, but their flawed logic is that they believe, quite rightly, I think, that they were treated badly in the 1980s by the Conservative government, and that this is their sort of way of showing their protest. And some argue that it's also a protest against Boris Johnson's government. But I'm sorry, it's not God Save the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
This is God Save the Queen.
And they'd be more than happy, of course, to collect the millions they'd earn playing for the country, wouldn't they?
Well, I mean, the point is the whole nation can get around the monarchy whilst loathing your prime minister, and we don't want to have that sort of division. In America, of course, half the nation always despises their head of state. You know, half the nation hated George W. Bush, then the other half hated Obama, the other half then hated Trump, and now they hate Biden. We don't have that, and you know, I'm not really sure that these grievance politics survive in 2021. This is not the 1980s or the 1990s. Liverpool has a much stronger economy. It's been regenerated to such a degree. There are far more deprived areas in the north of England that don't do this. Look at Blackburn or Burnley or Bradford or Blackpool. They're quite happy to sing the national anthem. So I see no reason why Liverpool should carry on this quite disgusting practice.
So you don't think it's any representation whatsoever of a diminishing, once the Queen sadly inevitably passes away, of a diminishing love for our royal family amongst the wider population? You don't think it's going to get, the approval ratings are going to drop and drop and drop?
Well, I think it's notable that when Prince William came out at the end of the match, there wasn't any booing.
Well, that's true.
so I think we can say this is much more targeted at the national anthem, and it's basically showing the ignorance of those fans who simply conflate the monarchy with the government, and they're two completely different things. And it's you know, showing disrespect to the nation as well as the Queen. And in this Platinum Jubilee year of all, I should say.
Well, exactly that. Can I ask whether you've been invited to any golden parties, my good man?
That's for me to know.
Oh, there he is. I suspect.
And I also wish you'd stop dressing so well and showing us all up when you come on.
Yes.
Well, you know, a bit of colour to celebrate the Platinum Jubilee. I think I'm in the mood now after yesterday's extravaganzas.
Yes, absolutely. No, always great to have you on, my good man, and we'll be speaking to you very, very soon, no doubt, as well, of course, Raf Haidel-Mankou there, a royal correspondent, expert, commentator. Anyway, right, so let's just do a few views.
Yes,
should we do a couple of views, right?
Absolutely. So some people, well, many people are not impressed whatsoever, to say the least, that the national anthem was booed. We've also got views coming in for your monologue, Ukraine and Eurovision. Alan says Ukraine could have had 3 screaming parrots and they still would have won Eurovision.
That's true.
But he says high time this rubbish was stopped, so he's not a fan, I'm assuming. No. But it is true, they were anticipated to win for obvious, you know, political, social reasons.
I did a rather jokey tweet about how we've been robbed by Ukraine and this, that and the other, of course. But, I mean, look, I think given the current political climate, and at the end of the day, they won not based on the jury vote, but on the public vote, and you have to respect that and accept that. And
but objectively, was their song better than ours, do you think?
To be honest with you, it's hard to tell with Eurovision, isn't it, really? I mean...
Because I've never heard any
of them. It's really quite hard to tell at Eurovision. I mean, seriously, some of the utter madness that we've had there. We've had the kind of the bearded lady. We've had all sorts. We've had the...
Conchita Wurst, I think her name was.
The babushkas or whatever we've had before. We've had some rather fruity, heavy metal stuff that's gone on and all of this stuff. So, yes, it's hard to tell whose song was objectively better, but someone does just want to check that my mental health is OK for saying that I thought one of the songs was good. Because seriously, it's from John, a poor deluded boy. He says he thinks some of the songs were good, but, you know, come on, a bit of national support. I thought he did well,
I think I'm with you there, John. But anyway, after the break, the government has denounced race equality schemes at universities as egregious wokery. Well, we'll give you more on the details of that story after this weather.
Hello, I'm Alex Deakin with your latest weather updates. A warm and humid day for most today. Some big thundery showers around this afternoon. And across much of Scotland, it's going to stay grey and wet. There's low pressure lurking in the Atlantic, but it's just kind of milling around here and throwing up warm and humid air from the south. Hence why we could see some big thunderstorms this afternoon, particularly over Wales and the Midlands, and then drifting northwards into Northern Ireland and parts of northern England. Some very heavy rain is possible in a short space of time. Meanwhile, the southern half of England turning largely dry this afternoon. We'll keep a lot of cloud and outbreaks of rain across Scotland. Quite a cold day in eastern Scotland, but elsewhere quite warm and humid, particularly if the sun pops out. Temperatures could get up to 23, maybe 24 Celsius, but still some very heavy showers around. Not great on the roads for this evening's rush hour. That's the M6 and the M5 in particular, but those thundery showers should ebb away. We'll always keep some cloud and rain across northern Scotland, but for most it becomes dry overnight. It's a little misty in places, temperatures holding up in double figures, so another pretty warm night. Notice out west, though, there is another band of rain. That's going to edge in during Tuesday, spread across Northern Ireland, eventually into Wales and southwest England, and it'll turn wet during tomorrow afternoon in western parts of Scotland as well. Elsewhere, for many places, it's a fine day, staying quite misty and murky around the Northern Isles, but quite a bit of sunshine over central and eastern parts. And a warmer day, 25, 26, maybe even 27 Celsius. Obviously cooler with this rain further west. That could be quite heavy again by the end of the day. And then later tomorrow through the evening, a risk of further thundery showers coming up from France across parts of eastern England. So plenty going on this week. Low pressure remains out west. Weather fronts continue to drift in, but all the time warm air never too far away from parts of England. Plenty going on this week. Further thunderstorms likely.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Well, very good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. It's 10:26. I'm Patrick Christie, joined by Mercy Murokey on GB News, live as ever on your TV, online and radio.
Yes, now a charity called Advance Higher Education has been charging universities thousands of pounds a year to take part in racial equality schemes, so they can be awarded gold or bronze ratings.
Yeah, well, apparently to get these medals or ratings, the universities have to demonstrate that they're implementing cultural changes on campus by, quote, decolonising their curriculum and using trigger warnings on course text.
Yes, and they also have to show they're taking the steps apparently to ensure students can, quote, engage safely with their course content with minimum psychological distress. But it seems that Advanced HE's run might be up because the Commons Education Committee has accused the charity of, quote, ramming through its toxic political ideology under the pretext of fighting for social justice.
Well, we're joined now by who better? I mean, GB News' very own Calvin Robinson. Calvin, thank you very much. Can you just explain to me exactly what's going on here? What is racial equality training?
It's a nonsense, that's what it is. And the universities have gone entirely woke because it's counterproductive. What we have at the moment is the fact that if you are Black African, you're twice as likely to get into university than if you're white British. In fact, the entry rates for all ethnic minority groups are at all-time highs. So between 2006 and 2021, Black pupils had the biggest entry rate increase out of all ethnic groups. So that's up from 21% of Black people getting into university to 48.6% of Black people getting into university. We've currently got 72% of Chinese pupils getting into uni, against 33% of white pupils. There is a clear racial disparity. There is clear racial injustice going on, but it's not in the way that the universities and these political groups are lobbying. It's actually a fact that white pupils have the lowest entry rate into university between 2007 and 2021. So if we want to address the imbalance there, we need to be looking at the bigger picture, and that's clearly not what's going on.
Yeah, really good statistics there. And isn't that the point? Because in order to measure how open a university is for ethnic minority students, surely there are already statistics that exist, such as the intake of ethnic minority students and how well they're doing at universities. Those are very objective measures, aren't they? Why are universities resorting to using these fluffy things about measuring, decolonising the curriculum and things like that when there already exist measures?
No, it's just virtue signalling. This decolonise word, it just means remove dead white men. It is racist. And I'm currently at Oxford University. I've got 1 month left here. I know you were here very recently, Mercy. This has also gone woke. They're hosting racially segregated student groups at the moment. If you're a person of colour, they're inviting you to talk about a safe space, a refuge for safety. Safety from what? Is there some kind of KKK group going on in Oxford that I'm unaware of? This is not inclusive. It's not inclusivity. It's backwards, as is the whole decolonise movement.
What about all these trigger warnings, Calvin? I'm seeing now that apparently there's going to be a trigger warning on the Little House on the Prairie, for example, and presumably other things as well. I did a thing on my Friday night show about nursery rhymes essentially being, I suppose you could say, de-racified or whatever, and Bar Black Sheep, for example, is obviously horrendously racist, and it turns out that she doesn't want to give her wool away. So all this kind of stuff is taking place. What's going on here? I mean, if I liked it, would I presumably have to jazz hand about it?
Yeah, it's so sad, isn't it? These content notes, these trigger warnings. We're creating sensitive little flowers that aren't prepared for the real world. I think university should be the most challenging place. You should be able to challenge all ideas and have good, open, honest debate. But we're de-skilling individuals at this point. We're no longer preparing people for what they're going to expect outside of the bounds of university. What's going to happen when you get into a real-world environment and someone uses a word you don't like? Bar Black Sheep is a great example, Patrick, because how is that racist? It uses the word black. The word black isn't racist. It's a nonsense. And what these universities need to do is actually get their act together. And at the moment, we have very few working class people getting into universities. And instead of fixing that, they're just lowering the entry requirements. It's a reverse snobbery right now against private schools. Anyone who went to a good school is being bullied out. Whereas what they need to do is make it so that people who are in state schools get a better opportunity. That doesn't mean welcoming people without the grades and the criteria. All of the things that they're doing, all the measures across class and across race in universities are back to front. They're avoiding common sense in order to look good. It's easier to look good than to actually do good.
I couldn't put it better myself, Calvin. Thank you so much for joining us and talking about that. I mean, it is quite worrying what's happening at the moment across our academic institutions, especially because so many students do now go to university. It's not just the reserve of the elites now. I think over half of students coming out of school do go to university. Calvin, thank you for joining us. Join us again soon.
Brilliant. Yes, it does seem as though we're trying to sink to the lowest common denominator as opposed to elevate other people, and that, to me, seems like a very self-defeating way to go about society. I understand that there are people there of all walks of life and all colours and creeds, etc., who are disadvantaged and could do with a leg up. But if you do look at the stats, as it currently stands, it's working-class white boys who are towards the lower end of that. And yet private schools, for example, are being banned, universities apparently are being banned from having scholarships singularly targeting white people in a way that they don't have when it comes to other ethnic minorities.
Yeah, the irony, actually, I was thinking when we were having that conversation with Calvin, he outed me there as somebody who went to Oxford. Me and Calvin did our postgrads there. And apparently you're the one who's got the white privilege, or me and Calvin are disadvantaged. That's how people look at things. They don't think, actually, why don't you just objectively look at somebody's experience and decide whether they're disadvantaged? I'm not disadvantaged because I'm black. That's simply objectively true. But some people just look at your skin colour and say, oh, well, we must put a racial equality scheme in for her because she happens to be black.
Well, the irony there is, given my academic prowess, I mean, Oxford probably wouldn't even let me clean the loos, whereas, they've let you do a postgrad, you know? So I don't really see how...
And guess what? I got in there by my own back, not because I was black.
Surely not. Surely not. God.
I know, can you believe it?
People have a field day with that absolutely mental comment. But anyway, right, well, so after the break... We are going to take a look at the horrific Buffalo City massacre this weekend. There's a lot to talk about there, actually, but before that, it's this morning's news.
Good morning, it is 10:32. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date. Boris Johnson is heading to Belfast to hold emergency talks with Northern Ireland's leaders today in a bid to break the Stormont deadlock. The Prime Minister has threatened to override parts of the Northern Ireland Protocol through new legislation in Westminster, despite warnings from the EU that would breach international law. The Assembly's been plunged into crisis in the wake of the local elections, with the Democratic Unionist Party refusing to join a devolved government. Well, Home Office Minister Rachel Maclean told GB News it was clear the protocol isn't working.
Well, clearly the situation is urgent. That's why the Prime Minister is going to Belfast, to get round the table with all the parties involved. We are seeing an impact now on Northern Ireland. All parties, I think, are agreed that the protocol in its current format doesn't work. And that's why we need to continue these dialogues and find the way through this.
The Home Secretary has permanently lifted restrictions on the stop and search powers used by the police. It's part of the government's strategy to tackle violent crime. Priti Patel has given officers the right to search people without reasonable grounds in an area where they would expect serious violence. Sweden will send diplomats to Turkey today in an attempt to overcome their objections to the Scandinavian nation joining NATO. Applications for new membership require unanimous approval from all existing NATO members. Sweden's expected to make a formal bid today, ending 73 years of internal opposition to the move. Finland confirmed yesterday it would also be applying. A statue of Baroness Margaret Thatcher has been egged less than 2 hours after being erected in her hometown in Lincolnshire. A protester was seen throwing eggs at the memorial shortly after it was lowered into place in Grantham yesterday. No arrests have been made. The Queen received a standing ovation on the last day of the Royal Windsor Horse Show. She was there for a star-studded celebration of her Platinum Jubilee in the grounds of Windsor Castle. Her Majesty made a couple of appearances at the horse show last week, her first public outing since March, having missed the state opening of Parliament because of mobility issues. You're up to date here on GB News. We're on your TV, online and DAB+ radio.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound is 1.22 to the dollar, the pound is 1.17 to the euro, and the price of gold currently stands at £1,471.67 per ounce.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News, investments that matter.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
OK, good morning, everybody. It's 10:38. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christie and Mercy Muroki on GB News Live, as ever on your TV, online and radio.
Yes, now, a very big story this coming out from over the Atlantic. An 18-year-old self-confessed white supremacist has been charged for suspected murder after 11 black people and 2 white people were shot in what police called a racially motivated hate crime.
Yeah, so 10 people died, 3 were wounded at the shooting, which took place at a supermarket in the majority black suburb of East Side Buffalo in New York on Saturday.
Yes, and just this morning, worshippers at the Geneva Presbyterian Church in Laguna Woods, California, stopped and tied up a gunman after he stormed their church, killing 1 and injuring 5.
Yeah, well, Will Gedd is a security expert, friend of the channel as well, it's fair to say. He joins us now live in the studio to unpack what happened. Will, just give us your take on this incident, really.
Well, this individual was known to the authorities. He had already made threats historically, once against his high school, but also indiscriminate threats as well. He'd been referred as a mental health issue, which was assessed over a day and a half and then released. During this time, he'd built up basically his arsenal. He'd been and bought a Bushmaster, almost an AR-15 type semi-automatic rifle, and from there planned his attack. Mimicking very, very closely the Christchurch massacre, the mosque massacre in 2019, with all sorts of words put on his actual automatic weapon, his semi-automatic weapon, and also fixing a camera to the top of his helmet so that he could record the entire event.
Right, and that recording presumably did actually make it out. I mean, I didn't see
it did, yes. So it was streamed on Twitch, and in fact, this morning I went onto Twitter and I found a full copy of that video. So there are many different dynamics to this story in terms of responsibility by social media, through to the prevention of these types of attacks when someone hits the radar.
And what questions does this raise? Because, of course, there's a massive gun law debate in America, very split one. People on the right side of politics will say, no, this isn't about gun crime. People kill people, not guns. And there's people saying about mental health as well, or does this raise issues, which the left might say, about the rise of alt-right nationalism? What issues are we dealing with here?
Wow, you've given me a lot there to work with, Mercy. So to start with, you know, I've used firearms over the years in the course of my work around the world. And it is true that, you know, it's people that kill people, not the firearms, but the firearms certainly help. And it's about the access to firearms, and it's about the checks and verification of individuals that really shouldn't be able to access or purchase weapons. That's the first and foremost point that I would have on that. The second thing, in terms of the far right, this threat has been exponentially increasing year in, year out. Since 2014, it's raised globally by about 250% by a global terrorism survey. Here in the United Kingdom last year, 41% of the counter-terrorism arrests that were affected were of far-right extremists. And the youngest person that has been prosecuted in this country was 13 years old. So when you match that all up with the type of attack that took place and the fact that it was live streamed, like the Christchurch attack in New Zealand, it's appealing very much to a younger audience. It's trying to hit that video game demographic of appeal to individuals to try and recruit them.
And has it just gone too far now? The idea of some kind of gun amnesty has been tried before in America, the idea of making the gun laws even tighter. But there must be so many guns in circulation at the moment in America that it would be impossible to stop people getting their hands on them.
It is difficult. It is also difficult in this country to try and stop firearms. There's a large volume of firearms that get brought into this country illegally. Since the Dunblane attack and massacre, obviously the legitimate ownership of weapons other than, say, .22 caliber or shotguns, for that matter, has been restricted enormously. And the whole idea of that was to try and minimise the chances of weapons getting into the hands of the wrong people. However, the wrong people will always find a way to get to them. And, you know, we could almost do a challenge Christie's to see how easy it is for you to procure a firearm if you really wanted to. It's not in vibe with your usual.
Well, no, but I mean,
story,
I'd be worried he'd, you know, accidentally shoot himself in the foot, quite literally, if he got hold of one.
I'd make sure he did, Mercy, don't worry.
Yes, OK, yeah, no, I'll to be honest with you, well, it's not the worst idea in the world. I might try and actually do that. But basically, it is pretty easy, you know, be on a more serious note, it is pretty easy to get a gun in this country if you want to.
Yeah.
It is,
And obviously, gun crime is more prevalent in America because they're legalised there in most cases. people here are worried about knife crime more often than not, especially amongst the younger groups. Preeti Patel has said she's taking away the restrictions for stop and search, so to give the police more powers to stop and search. What do you make of this? Is it going to be effective in curbing the use of knives amongst younger people?
Well, I think it certainly will. I think, a vast majority of individuals, certainly of youth who carry knives, they're using it more in a defensive capability, i.e. to protect themselves necessarily, than use it in a aggressive or an offensive way. However, you've got to try and eliminate all parties from potentially carrying knives, because if someone is faced by a situation, they may go to it in anger or in duress, and ultimately you end up in a far worse situation, inevitably. However, the fact is that this Section 60, obviously, of stop and search being removed, I think it has to be implemented in a very cautious way, because inevitably there are going to be certain demographics, there are going to be certain ethnicities that are going to feel that they are being unfairly and unjustly targeted, and in many cases they can be. So it's got to be implemented in a very cautious and considered way. But I think it will certainly enable the police to have more powers to intercept and implement in a proactive sense the searches, but it's about how they're conducted. That's the key thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, well, thank you very, very much. As always, we'll get his, of course, a regular on this channel and security expert, just whizzing you through a very unfortunate situation yet again in America, yet another mass shooting, but there we go. Right, we're going to move away from that now and talk about something else entirely, actually. Jeremy Clarkson's daughter, Emily, says that she gets cyber flash relentlessly on Instagram. I must say this was a phrase I wasn't aware of, but I think it's relatively self-explanatory when you hear it. And what's the social media platform? Basically, to do more to stop it.
Yes, well, getting a cyber flash, for those who don't know, means basically receiving illicit pictures without your consent, either via text message, online message, or via Bluetooth as well. So nude pictures essentially being sent to your phone without you asking for them.
Yeah, so the 27-year-old says Instagram's inaction meant that she had to take matters into her own hands, sending a fake automatic reply asking the sender to confess they sent a photo by mistake or risk losing their account completely. And Emily Clarkson is one of a group of female social media stars who've pleaded with MPs to introduce laws that make online flashing as punishable as in-person flashing. But what is the existing legislation covering online indecent exposure? Does cyber flashing need to exist in its own category?
Yes, well, let's discuss this in detail with our next guest, Mark Jones, the Police and Crime Commissioner for Lincolnshire. Excuse me, I have got a sore throat, Mark, so bear with me. This is something that I would imagine happens more to young women than men, but I think, personally, criminalising it goes too far. Shouldn't it be left up to the social media companies to deal with it?
Well, I think the social media companies have a huge responsibility here, but let's be clear, unless they're pressured into taking any kind of action on any subject, they're commercial entities. They will do what's right for them commercially, not what's socially responsible. And this is a particular case where we know a significant amount of, as you say, predominantly young women, but not exclusively, are targeted. And let's be clear, if somebody did this to them in the street rather than online, we would be appalled and we would be expecting those people to be locked up and, not permitted to do this. It's simply not acceptable to say it's online, so it's OK.
I do understand that, but I wouldn't accept that it's equivalent to doing it in the street, because the distinction I would make is that if I was walking down the street right now and somebody flashed me, obviously I wouldn't be able to do anything about that. But on my social media, for example, I block messages from anybody who I don't follow, for example. So if I was to open a message, that's a choice I've made. If I go into my blocked messages and open it, then I've made. People can also take personal responsibility to improve their privacy settings, right?
That's true. And equally, though, when you are talking to a 13-year-old girl about how she needs to keep safe online, explaining that this is likely to happen, she's likely to see these images, and that, this is socially somehow acceptable, that it's not going to be tackled by the police appropriately, I think is just not right. We're coming through a very peculiar time where it's odd in history. We've got some analog parents with digital children, and we've got to educate the parents on how to help keep their children safe in the virtual world as much as we would expect in the local park. and we've still got work to do there. But social media companies do need to take some responsibility here.
Yeah, I'm sure they do. Can I ask what the current prosecution for flashing is, whether or not flashes are prosecuted that regularly, and what kind of punishment they can expect, just in real life, not cyber flashes?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't got the specifics of how many, because that's obviously a national piece of data, but, you know, it can carry a prison sentence. And what's really important is that people who carry out crimes of this kind, and it is a sexually motivated crime, get the help and support they need to prevent that behaviour in the future, as well as get an appropriate punishment. We need to change the behaviour. The same applies online. If you are sending these images, you need help and support to prevent it. Equally, you need an element of punishment. And to get that, we've got to be able to identify who you are. We need social media companies to help with that. And that will mean then police can take appropriate action. So it can carry a prison sentence, but in reality, it's all about finding out who you are so that we can intervene in that way.
Yes, well, thank you so much for joining us and speaking about that, Mark Jones there, a police and crime commissioner. It's a really interesting topic, this, because we all use social media now, don't we, really? And we all have smartphones, especially younger people. I have to say, this has never happened to me, as in somebody sending me an unsolicited nude. I don't know if that says something about me, but I do wonder how prevalent it actually is, because I know people send naked pictures of themselves, but from what I understand, the vast majority is done in a sort of consenting way, rather than just sending somebody out of the blue that you don't know a naked picture.
Oh, well, I mean, I obviously would have absolutely no idea about this, but there we go. Yes, no. But I do think there is a difference, OK, for me, between... And it's a kind of computer culture, isn't there? If you're going out your way to go out on the street or a park or whatever and flash someone physically, to me, that does seem like a more serious issue than... you know, sending an unsolicited picture.
I don't like the equivalence of it at all.
I don't think there is much of an equivalence.
This has actually happened to somebody close in my family before, and she did report it to the police in person, in person, very early in the morning, quite dark, on their way to work. They couldn't really do anything about it. It was very hard to track the person down. I really don't like to think that that is the same. But encountering a strange man in an alleyway who's flashing you is in any way the same as somebody sending you a nude picture. Just block them and delete them.
Yes, well, that's it, I suppose, exactly. But anyway, right. We're going to take you now through some of the headlines of the day that you may have missed. So, an elderly Indian couple are suing their son and daughter-in-law for a lack of grandchildren. Sanjeev and Sadhana Prasad demand that their son and his wife produce a child within a year or pay them compensation of 50 million rupees, roughly speaking about £530,000.
Yes, I love this. They say the compensation will cover the money they have invested in the couple who've been married for 6 years, including the cost of their 5-star wedding reception, a luxury car, their honeymoon and their son's education, which the grandparents say they've paid for. Well, they've said, if we had a grandchild to spend time with, our pain will become bearable, they said.
I mean, this is unreal. Like, thankfully, there's no pressure on me to produce grandchildren. But, I mean, that could be due to anything, presumably. They might be having fertility issues.
Well, it is somewhat funny. I mean, my mum doesn't have to worry about this. She has about 8 grandchildren, to be honest, and she's only in her mid-50s. So definitely not a problem she'll face. But I'd be quite gutted if my child didn't have several children.
Really?
My child, yeah, I want to be a grandparent.
Gosh.
Don't you look forward to it? You're lying. You love old people. You love it. So I know deep down, and you love your grandma.
That one,
I know everybody does.
But
yeah. You love old people. You love spending time with old people.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean I feel the need to be an old person myself with a farm of children, does it?
Yeah, but you have a really good relationship with your grandparents.
Yeah, I do, yeah.
And so don't you want that same thing when you're older, somebody to look after you?
I suppose I just think if it happens, you know? I'm not massively paternal. Like, I don't not want kids, but I'm not... OK, but I'm also not, you know, desperate to have them. But then again, I'm an only child. Shock. So is my mum, and we've got a very small family, so I don't know, maybe it comes a bit from that.
Yeah, that's true. I have quite a big... Well, my grandma had 10 children, let's put it that way. I think she has 100... Well, she passed away recently, but she had 150-something sort of direct descendants alive.
Goodness gracious me.
Big family.
Well, there we go. All right, let's move on to the next one from lack of reproduction, I suppose. Spain is planning to introduce medical leave for women who suffer from severe period pains, media reports suggest.
Yes, well, a draft bill says women could have 3 days of leave a month, extended to 5 in some circumstances. And if passed, it would be the first such legislation in Europe to give women this. And only a handful of countries around the world have such legislation in place. What do you think of this as a man?
Well, I don't know whether or not it might be better for everybody. Right, fish and chip shops, moving on, are in crisis following a shortage of key ingredients, presumably fish and chips. Oh, no, not in fact, read on, sunflower oil, used to fry up the fish. It surged in price following the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
Yes, well, Ukraine is a major producer of it, of course. So we just wanted to know what you guys think about this. Are you actually worried? The Ukraine is called the breadbasket of Europe. Are you worried that this might impact food prices or anything like that? Let us know what you think, because, of course, this is coming in the midst of a cost of living crisis as well. So get in touch and let us know your views.
Gosh, that fish and chips look good. But, of course, I won't be able to eat anything like that because, in case you haven't heard, I am raising money.
Is why I eat on your behalf.
Eat on my behalf. There's all this food down there as well. But anyway, I am raising money for a great cause. So what I'm doing, right, is I'm losing 1.5 stone. I've got, to be honest, the best, just under 1 stone to go in 3 weeks' time. And then I'm going to be performing live on stage with the Dream Boys, which is male strippers, to raise awareness for male mental health in general, really. And thank you to everyone who's been donating. We've already got to £11,400, and that link is justgiving.com/fundraising/Challenge Christie's, justgiving.com/fundraising/Challenge Christie's. And basically, yeah, we really hope that if you can Give what you can, basically, to this cause. That would be great. If we could get close to 12 grand by the end of today's show, I don't know if that's a bit ambitious, but it would be amazing.
I don't think so. I think we got a grand once, I think, in the course of an hour or something like that. So don't think it's ambitious at all. So justgiving.com/fundraising/Challenge Christie's is that website. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this Wednesday we are once again handing over our show to you. We want you to tell us what we should talk about, what you think are the most important stories.
It was such a success last week, with so many getting in touch. We're doing it all over again, and the inbox is already filling up. So please tell us the subjects that need covering, the questions that you think need answering, and all of that. You can email us to thepoint@gbnews.uk. But yes, just a cheeky little plug for that fundraiser again, one sec, because it is about mental health, really. And I won't stop banging the drum for this because we are in a mental health crisis at the moment in this country. Suicide is the single biggest killer of men under the age of 45, and every single day, right here in this country, 12 men take their own lives. So even just a little bit of money, justgiving.com/fundraising/Challenge Christie's, even just a little bit of money could help save a life.
Yes, indeed. Well, keep all your thoughts coming into our email. gbviews@gbnews.uk is where you get your thoughts in. But if you want to suggest something for us to talk about on Wednesday, it's to thepoint@gbnews.uk. I hope that's not too complicated.
Yes.
We'll be back with more of today's top stories and plenty of reviews after this short break.
Hello, I'm Alex Deakin with your latest weather updates. A warm and humid day for most today. Some big thundery showers around this afternoon. And across much of Scotland, it's going to stay grey and wet. There's low pressure lurking in the Atlantic, but it's just kind of milling around here and throwing up warm and humid air from the south. Hence why we could see some big thunderstorms this afternoon, particularly over Wales and the Midlands, and then drifting northwards into Northern Ireland and parts of northern England. Some very heavy rain is possible in a short space of time. Meanwhile, the southern half of England turning largely dry this afternoon. We'll keep a lot of cloud and outbreaks of rain across Scotland. Quite a cold day in eastern Scotland, but elsewhere quite warm and humid, particularly if the sun pops out. Temperatures could get up to 23, maybe 24 Celsius, but still some very heavy showers around. Not great on the roads for this evening's rush hour. That's the M6 and the M5 in particular, but those thundery showers should ebb away. We'll always keep some cloud and rain across northern Scotland, but for most it becomes dry overnight. It's a little misty in places, temperatures holding up in double figures, so another pretty warm night. Notice out west, though, there is another band of rain. That's going to edge in during Tuesday, spread across Northern Ireland, eventually into Wales and southwest England, and it'll turn wet during tomorrow afternoon in western parts of Scotland as well. Elsewhere, for many places, it's a fine day, staying quite misty and murky around the Northern Isles, but quite a bit of sunshine over central and eastern parts. And a warmer day, 25, 26, maybe even 27 Celsius. Obviously cooler with this rain further west. That could be quite heavy again by the end of the day. And then later tomorrow through the evening, a risk of further thundery showers coming up from France across parts of eastern England. So plenty going on this week. Low pressure remains out west. Weather fronts continue to drift in, but all the time warm air never too far away from parts of England. Plenty going on this week. Further thunderstorms likely.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here. You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Well, a very good morning to you all. It's just gone 11 o'clock on Monday the 16th of May, and this is To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christie, and Mercy Murokey on your TV, radio and online.
Yes, we're here with you until midday for another hour full of the day's top stories from Wagatha Christie. Many of you are bored of hearing about that. We'll discuss, though, to the PM in Northern Ireland.
Well, make sure that you get in touch with your views. As usual, GBViews at gbnews.uk. We're getting to those throughout the show, but first, it's time for your latest news.
A very good morning to you. It's just 1 minute past 11. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date on GB News. Boris Johnson is heading to Belfast to hold emergency talks with Northern Ireland's leaders today in a bid to try to break the Stormont deadlock. The Prime Minister's threatened to override parts of the Northern Ireland Protocol through new legislation in Westminster. That's despite warnings from the EU it would breach international law. The Assembly's been plunged into crisis in the wake of local elections, with the Democratic Unionist Party refusing to join a devolved government. Home Office Minister Rachel Maclean told GB News it was clear the protocol isn't working.
Well, clearly the situation is urgent. That's why the Prime Minister is going to Belfast, to get round the table with all the parties involved. We are seeing an impact now on Northern Ireland. All parties, I think, are agreed that the protocol in its current format doesn't work. And that's why we need to continue these dialogues and find the way through this.
The Home Secretary has permanently lifted restrictions on the stop and search powers currently used by police. It's part of the government's strategy to tackle violent crime. Priti Patel has now given officers the right to search people without reasonable grounds in an area where they would expect serious violence. It gives the police power to preemptively look for weapons before they're potentially used in a crime. The wider use of stop and search has become controversial over concerns that it disproportionately affects black and minority ethnic communities. Sweden will today send diplomats to Turkey in an attempt to overcome their objections to the Scandinavian nation joining NATO. Applications for new membership require unanimous approval from all existing NATO members. Sweden's expected to make a formal bid today, ending 73 years of internal opposition to the move. Finland confirmed yesterday it would also be applying for membership. Ukraine says troops defending the country's second-largest city, Kharkiv, have fought through Russian advances and reached the state border with Russia. It suggests that a Ukrainian counterattack is having increasing success in pushing back Russian forces in the northeast. Ukrainian military, though, say there's no let-up in Russia's bombardment of the steelworks in the southern city of Mariupol, where hundreds of fighters are still holed up. Well, footage released by a pro-Russian separatist, that footage hasn't been verified, shows munitions falling over the Avestal steel plant. More than 8,000 migrants have arrived in the UK after crossing the English Channel this year. It's more than double the number recorded for the same period last year. The Home Office say it'll begin the process of informing the first asylum seekers they could be flown to Rwanda under its new resettlement scheme, with flights, the Home Office says, expected to begin in the next coming months. 1 in 4 people with dementia have symptoms for more than 2 years before they're diagnosed. The Alzheimer's Society suggests the signs are often too dismissed as simply old age. They've produced a new checklist with the Royal College of GPs to help people identify symptoms. That list includes things like memory problems, becoming withdrawn and getting lost. Children's physical activity levels have fallen below national guidelines since the pandemic. Using data from pre- and post-lockdown restrictions, research from the University of Bristol found that by the end of last year, only a third of 10 to 11-year-olds reached the recommended physical activity guidelines. They estimate those children were doing around 8 minutes less physical activity a day than before the pandemic. A statue of Baroness Margaret Thatcher has been egged less than 2 hours after it was erected in her hometown in Lincolnshire. A protester was seen throwing eggs at the memorial shortly after it was lowered into place in Grantham yesterday. Lincolnshire police say they received report of criminal damage. No arrests have been made. The Queen received a standing ovation on the last day of the Royal Windsor Horse Show. She was there for a star-studded celebration of her Platinum Jubilee in the grounds at Windsor Castle. She made a couple of visits to the horse show last week, her first public appearances since March, having missed the state opening of Parliament due to mobility issues. Well, as we head towards that Platinum Jubilee bank holiday weekend, drivers are being warned to expect congestion. Over 130,000 UK roads will be inaccessible because they're hosting street parties. Well, the breakdown rescue firm Green Flag say around 8% of adults live on a road hosting a council-approved party over the 4-day bank holiday. And Friday is proving to be the most popular. You're up to date now on GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's head back to the point.
Well, good morning, everybody. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christie, and Mercy Murokey on your TV, online and radio. We've got a great show lined up for you in this final hour, so here's what's coming up.
Yes, the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, will fly to Belfast today for crisis talks in an attempt to restore Northern Ireland's government. He is expected to green-light legislation that could allow ministers to tear up the Northern Ireland Protocol. We'll be live outside Stormont and Number 10 shortly to tell you everything you need to know.
And Sweden and Finland have both said that they will apply for NATO membership in clear response to Russian aggression in Ukraine. What does this mean for de-escalation and global security? Is it a good idea? Major General Tim Cross will join us.
Yes, we'll also be diving into the top showbiz story of the day, the so-called Wagatha Christie trial. In fact, I'm giving some very candid views on this in just a moment. And our South East of England reporter will bring us right up to date on the latest proceedings.
Yeah, indeed. Wayne Rooney there looking increasingly like a nightclub bouncer. Anyway, we'll have all of that coming up and much, much more across the programme. You can get in touch as usual, gbviews@gbnews.uk. But first, Mercy does give her views on that Wagatha Christie trial.
Today marks the second week of the court case dubbed the Wagatha Christie trial, a legal battle between the wives of footballers Wayne Rooney and Jamie Vardy. Let's briefly recap where this all began. Back in 2017, private stories about Colin Rooney's life, which she was posting on social media to friends, began appearing in the tabloids. So, in 2019, Colin Rooney decided to launch her own sting operation. She would post fake stories, make them only visible to specific unwitting friends. If those stories ended up in the tabloids, then she'd know who was the leak by who had viewed the posts. Quite clever. And as she suspected, a made-up story she had posted on her social media ended up in The Sun. That story, she claims, was only viewed by one person, leading to that now infamous revelation. It's Rebecca Vardy's account. But the plot thickens. Last year, Rebecca Vardy, aggrieved by being accused of being the leaker, sued Rooney for libel, denying she had anything to do with the leak. And so the sensational farce that is the Wagatha Christie trial was born. Now, why am I talking about this? I don't care about petty wags who are only rich off the backs of their husbands, dragging each other through the courts over an Instagram post, clearly. Well, here's the thing. This trial will cost the pair millions in legal fees. That's according to estimates. And actually, the real reason I'm talking about this now is because another woman in the press has been facing a trial all of her own over the last week. Not a trial of the legal kind, but a personal trial of physical anguish and mental resilience. Deborah James, now Dame Deborah James, a former teacher, has been bravely sharing her experiences of having incurable bowel cancer since her diagnosis in 2016. Well, a week ago, she revealed that doctors had tried everything, but that after a 6-year battle with bowel cancer, the 40-year-old mother of 2 was now receiving end-of-life care. A heartbreaking article in her final column in the Sun newspaper this week wrote this: "My body is so emaciated that I have no choice but to surrender to the inevitable. I do not want to die. I can't get my head around the idea that I will not see my kids' weddings or see them grow up. I'm not brave. I'm not dignified going towards my death. I am simply a scared girl who is doing something she has no choice in, but I know I am grateful for the life I've had." Well, anyone with a pulse can't help but feel equally devastated for and inspired by Deborah. And just a week ago, as she announced her sad news, she launched a fundraiser for research into cancer care with an initial goal of £250,000. Well, as of this morning, ladies and gentlemen, she has raised nearly £6.2 million. You can see there that that's 2,479% of her original target. She's probably raised more, actually, since we've been on air. This is simply extraordinary. And as a fitting tribute to her tremendous work, Prince William actually visited Deborah in person at home to honour her with a damehood, the most senior honour in the land. A title, of course, she more than deserves. Now, I've been watching these two stories develop over the last week, and my goodness, these women could not be any more different. In her darkest hour, Deborah James decided she would dedicate the remaining few years of her life to an incredible cause. She's worked tirelessly and courageously to raise awareness and money for cancer sufferers of present and future. She's remained dignified, kind and humble. Meanwhile, Vardy and Rooney have been busy feeling sorry for themselves in court whilst, to coin a phrase, spaffing money up the wall for what I consider to be utterly self-serving, trivial purposes. Now, I can already hear the chorus of liberal feminists yelling, "How dare you judge women? Women can do what they like." To which I say, exactly, women can do what they like, which is why I'm exercising my free speech to condemn the pair in the Wagatha Christie shenanigans for their self-absorption. Look, I'm a mother to a daughter. Female role models actually really matter to me, and this last week has been a good reminder of just who is and isn't a female role model. If my daughter was old enough to understand everything that's going on in the world, and thank God she isn't, I would simply tell her this: in a world of Rebecca Vardys, be a Deborah James. In fact, I think we can all, every single one of us, learn an important lesson from this extraordinary, inspirational woman.
Yeah, I mean, the contrast there couldn't be more stark, could it, really? I mean, this is just absolutely madness what's going on with the Rooney-Vardy-Wagatha Christie trial. It's completely irrelevant. And the fact is, actually, to be honest with you, if neither of them had pressed charges against each other, we'd have all forgotten about this by now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, it should be said, actually, before I say what I was going to say, that if they are awarded damages, or more specifically, if Rebecca Vardy is awarded damages for this libel case, it's not going to be that much. It's going to be way less than she's actually spent sort of in legal fees. So they're doing this not for the money, but just because for their own self-image, you know, to kind of get back at each other. And I just think if you've got millions of pounds that you're willing to spend because somebody posted an Instagram, you know, post of you, sold it to the Sun or whatever, just do something good with it and say, you know what, these millions of pounds I have, I can probably put it to a good cause, and let's just draw the line under the sand, and I'm going to stop being so narcissistic and do something good for once.
Yeah, but this just shows where their priorities lie. The likes of Rebecca Vardy's of this world, their priorities lie with what the WAG community thinks, what the footballing community thinks, as in the players, essentially, and what some of the Red Tops think, as opposed to actually doing something maybe more worthwhile and meaningful. And when you do look at Rebecca Vardy, in the past, she's done some rather fruity things with the British press, not least one related to Peter Andre and, you know, the signs or indeed otherwise of his manhood. And you just think, really, if you've got nothing better on to do, it seems a bit strange for me that they would really waste as much time, effort and money on this. Although I suppose maybe if her priority is just to stay in the newspapers and stay relevant, then that's what she's doing. But there's another way to do it, and you could do it like the Bowel Babe instead.
Yes, absolutely. And just read one email quickly. Marianne here says, Deborah James is the most incredible human being, selfless and totally giving. The WAG wives should hang their heads in shame at the way they are behaving, totally self-absorbed. So that's from Marianne there.
Totally self-absorbed. I do feel a bit sorry as well for Wayne Rooney and Jamie Vardy in this, who must occasionally just be looking at each other like, what the living heck are we living through? But, of course, Wayne Rooney has got no way out of this. Colleen has put up with him so much that he has to go to court and sit next to her every single day.
Well, they can cry into their wallets, their massive, fat wallets, if they feel that upset over it, eh?
Wayne Rooney's wallet appears to be getting fatter. But anyway, there we go. On that note, our South East of England reporter, Ellie Costello, has the very latest from the Supreme Court.
Well, you can see the press gathering behind me for the start of week 2 of this Wagatha Christie trial. Rebecca Vardy is suing Colleen Rooney for libel after Colleen Rooney publicly claimed in a post that went viral that Rebecca Vardy was selling private stories about her to the Sun newspaper. Well, on Friday, Wagatha Christie herself took to the witness stand, and it was the first time that we were able to hear a little bit about that sting operation that she set up in order to discover who was leaking those stories about herself. She told the High Court that that post, that investigation, was a last resort, that she doesn't even want to be here right now, and the only reason she's here is because Rebecca Vardy has brought it this far. Colleen Rooney also lifted the lid on the context of this sleuthing operation. She was speaking about when these stories were being leaked. It was in 2018, 2019. It's when the Rooney family, had moved to the US for Wayne Rooney to play football. And Colleen Rooney was talking about being dreadfully homesick at the time. She was crying every single night. She said she couldn't FaceTime her parents because she was getting too emotional. And it was during this time that those stories were being leaked to the Sun newspaper. She said she felt as though she'd allowed someone into her inner circle and they were then betraying her from her private Instagram account, of which she only had about 300 people on there. So she did give us an insight into psychology of how she was feeling at the time and why she decided to stage this operation. She was then asked by Rebecca Vardy's barrister why she decided to make this such a public announcement, and she said she was very surprised at how big the post had gone. It did go viral all over the world, and it made headlines in many newspapers around the world as well. She said that it was not in her nature to cause abuse or trolling, and she was very sorry that Rebecca Vardy had gone through that. She also opened the lid on her friendship with Rebecca Vardy. She said that they were never close, they weren't in the same circle, and she felt as though Rebecca Vardy only contacted her when she wanted information from her. She implied that Rebecca Vardy was trying too hard to be her friend, and that initially is what made her suspicious. Well, earlier on Friday, Rebecca Vardy was very emotional. She spoke about why she brought this to trial. She said that she hadn't done anything wrong and she wanted to clear her name. She said that she felt bullied by the cross-examination process that went on for almost 4 days here at the High Court. Well, on Friday, we did see the women look at each other for the first time, actually, in these proceedings. They did exchange very stern looks. And we can expect that to continue today when Colleen Rooney takes the stand and her cross-examination continues.
Yeah, I mean, I must say, thank you, by the way, for that, Ellie. I must say, I am absolutely gripped by it, but it is a trial of two people with more money than sense.
Yeah, I think the same could be said, actually, about Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. I mean, that, I think, is worse. The stuff that's coming out of that is just horrid in terms of the domestic abuse, I think, on both of their parts. But, yeah, celebrities don't do themselves any favours, really, when they drag each other through courts.
No, they don't, and there's no winners. There will be no winners in this at the end of the day, apart from the lawyers, of course.
The very rich lawyers.
Well, indeed. Indeed, I'm dealing with some now, and they certainly are rather rich. OK, right. So we're going to delve into the terrifying world of my inbox, and here we go. We've got loads of views coming in. Vardy versus Rooney. They said they didn't have this money, it was sorted out ages ago with a scrap outside Wetherspoons. I suspect that's actually true, John. Really good point. You know, do it the old school way. Why would you allow someone to speak about you in this way? Mrs. Rooney had no choice but to defend herself. That's from Patricia. So actually, there is a rather large public interest, you know, in this Rooney Vardy trial, isn't there?
Yes, but many of you just saying it's all pathetic. Pete says, oh, that's another comment. Bernard says, Wagatha Christie, they are doing this because they have no other talents. Fair enough, I would say. But to Pete's comment was, I'll donate money if you, Patrick, keep your clothes on.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going about
Patrick's,
as well.
Doing a striptease. What is it, like a performance?
Yeah, I got sent the routine over the weekend. It's graphic.
Yeah, to raise money for charity, so all for a good cause. So he'll be taking his clothes off for charity.
Not all of my clothes.
Pete will donate money. Well, how much do you have to take off in this performance?
Quite a lot. But it's all for charity. OK, it's all for charity.
Charity.
Yeah, that's right. OK, and of course we're doing it as well in conjunction with a guy called Nathan Dunn, who is walking barefoot from from John O'Groats to Land's End, and he's setting a world record in the process. We'll try and check in with him tomorrow. He is obviously doing an incredible feat of endurance. We will be going and walking with him, hopefully, one day very, very soon. But yes, of course, my one there is justgiving.com/fundraising/challenge Christie's. If you can, dig deep into your pockets, give a few quid. It's all for male mental health, OK? And I'm losing 1.5 stone in the process. So, you know, anyone who knows me and knows the way I like to eat will know that this is actually proving rather tricky for me. But after the break, we'll be talking about the political situation in Northern Ireland as the Prime Minister travels across the Irish Sea to seek a resolution and a functioning assembly. But before that, here's a look at this morning's weather.
Hello, I'm Alex Deakin with your latest weather updates. A warm and humid day for most today. Some big thundery showers around this afternoon. And across much of Scotland, it's going to stay grey and wet. There's low pressure lurking in the Atlantic, but it's just kind of milling around here and throwing up warm and humid air from the south. Hence why we could see some big thunderstorms this afternoon, particularly over Wales and the Midlands, and then drifting northwards into Northern Ireland and parts of northern England. Some very heavy rain is possible in a short space of time. Meanwhile, the southern half of England turning largely dry this afternoon. We'll keep a lot of cloud and outbreaks of rain across Scotland. Quite a cold day in eastern Scotland, but elsewhere quite warm and humid, particularly if the sun pops out. Temperatures could get up to 23, maybe 24 Celsius, but still some very heavy showers around. Not great on the roads for this evening's rush hour. That's the M6 and the M5 in particular, but those thundery showers should ebb away. We'll always keep some cloud and rain across northern Scotland, but for most it becomes dry overnight. It's a little misty in places, temperatures holding up in double figures, so another pretty warm night. Notice out west, though, there is another band of rain. That's going to edge in during Tuesday, spread across Northern Ireland, eventually into Wales and southwest England, and it'll turn wet during tomorrow afternoon in western parts of Scotland as well. Elsewhere, for many places, it's a fine day, staying quite misty and murky around the Northern Isles, but quite a bit of sunshine over central and eastern parts. And a warmer day, 25, 26, maybe even 27 Celsius. Obviously cooler with this rain further west. That could be quite heavy again by the end of the day. And then later tomorrow through the evening, A risk of further thundery showers coming up from France across parts of eastern England. So plenty going on this week. Low pressure remains out west. Weather fronts continue to drift in, but all the time warm air never too far away from parts of England. Plenty going on this week. Further thunderstorms likely.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here. You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle, and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
Join me, Gloria De Piero, Monday to Thursday at noon for The Briefing. We go to the parts of Parliament that you won't see elsewhere. Plus, there's exclusive interviews with MPs from all parties.
But quite often, they paper over the real truth. Why does a working class lad like you join the Tories?
That's a good question.
Don't miss it, Monday to Thursdays at noon on GB News.
Very good morning. It's 11:25 and this is To The Point with me, Mercy Moroki, and Patrick Christie on GB News. We're live on your TV, online and radio this morning.
We are indeed. Now, Boris Johnson will head to Belfast today for talks with the major Stormont parties in an attempt to restore Northern Ireland's government.
Yes, the Democratic Unionist Party is refusing to enter the Assembly over concerns about the Northern Ireland Protocol, which they argue undermines Northern Ireland's position in the UK by putting a trade border in the Irish Sea. It comes as the European Union warns of retaliatory measures if the UK acts to unilaterally suspend or change the protocol.
Indeed. Well, joining us, indeed, to make sense of what has happened across the Irish Sea and what could happen is our Northern Ireland reporter, Jiggy Beattie, who is in Belfast for us now. Jiggy, great stuff. Thank you for joining us here. Just give us an overview, please, of the situation and any latest developments.
Well, first of all, this trip will all be about optics and credibility. And we have now moved from Stormont House to the Queen's residence in Northern Ireland, Hillsborough Castle. I'm on my way there now. So that in itself speaks volumes. The Prime Minister may not want to be seen in and around Stormont, the very place where his oven-ready deal that he talked about has caused not to sit. The problems around the protocol are quite simple. It is that there is no consent from the unionist community to have it. It puts a trade border in the Irish Sea, it adds on about 20% onto our shipping costs, and it makes selection an awful lot more harder, so therefore pushes up prices in the supermarkets. The Republic of Ireland really want and need this protocol because it protects the single market. It stops goods coming just straight in off the boat from America or whatever into Northern Ireland and going across the border into the Republic and therefore onward journey into the EU. And that's what this deal is about. It's an international trade deal designed to protect the integrity of the single market. That's what the protocol does. And unfortunately, in doing so, it done away with Article 6, the Act of the Union, that allowed Northern Ireland to trade freely with the UK, and that divergence of laws was then overseen by the European Courts of Justice. Of course, Northern Ireland is no longer part of the EU, so it has no MEPs in the north, so no unionists have MEPs, but nationalists do have MEPs in the south. So unionists are saying, why are we sitting in a government enforcing laws that we do not make? They're made in a foreign country. They're made in Europe and we have no say into them. They are describing this as a colony. Now, over the weekend, Simon Coveney, the Foreign Minister for the Republic of Ireland, has said this is going to destroy the Good Friday Agreement. He's come up with all sorts of things. And unfortunately then in Belfast, we then have the front of our newspapers with armed loyalists claiming such things and saying such things as legitimate targets. This is not a good place to be. We are now going backwards. They have replaced this international peace agreement with an international trade agreement. And next week we will see the Americans into Dublin trying to sort out even more stuff. But Joe Biden has not seemed to be neutral. He has put himself forward saying that if Britain breaks the protocol, then there will be no trade deal with America. So we now have no neutrals. In the agreement of 1998, the Good Friday Agreement, we had Bertie Ahern, who was the Taoiseach, the Prime Minister of the Republic of Ireland, took loyalist paramilitaries by the hand and assured them that the Republic of Ireland had no sovereign interest in Northern Ireland. That was the loyalists signed up. Tony Blair did exactly the same with the Nationalists, Republicans, the IRA, and they were signed up. And Bill Clinton was neutral in the middle, and the whole thing gelled together very well. That's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity in politics. Unfortunately, nobody now is being seen as neutral, and unionism is retreating and becoming more and more defensive. And Boris Johnson has lost his credibility in amongst unionism by promising them so much and delivering nothing. They will now not move until they actually see actions. Words are not enough. Legislation will not be enough. They want action.
Goodness me. Well, I tell you what, you've managed to sift your way across the minefield of Northern Irish politics there, Dougie, rather well for us. Thank you very much. And incredibly informative stuff, Dougie Beattie there in Belfast. We're going to lob it over now to Tom Harwood, who's outside Downing Street for us to get the view from these shores. Tom, what's the latest there?
Well, of course, the Prime Minister's visit to Belfast today will be an incredibly important moment. We've heard a lot of briefing to the press. We've heard a lot of noise, really, from the United Kingdom government over the past few weeks on this issue. This is the moment where Boris Johnson is really trying to reach out to the communities in Northern Ireland to explain the United Kingdom's position on this and to try and unstick those talks. Let's not forget that the United Kingdom government has been speaking to the European Union, has been negotiating on this protocol for the past 16 months. And really, it's got to the point now where the UK government feel like very little is moving, where Maroš Šefčovič, the negotiator for the EU, has reached the end of his mandate. The United Kingdom government asking the EU to extend that mandate to allow these talks to go further. That is not yet happening. So what's happening tomorrow? Well, new legislation that would allow parts of this protocol to be unblocked. being picked. This is where it gets incredibly tense, because there are vague threats, veiled threats perhaps, that there would be repercussions were the United Kingdom to act unilaterally, despite the United Kingdom government's insistence that it's within the terms of the protocol, both in Article 13(8) that allows for superseding agreements, but also, of course, that famous Article 16, the safety valve, the button to press were this protocol not to work, were trade to be diverted or community cohesion to be damaged. These are the provisions by which the UK government feels it can act within the terms of the protocol. However, if the EU disagrees, there could be rocky waters ahead, indeed even words of a trade war.
Keep on top of that story as it's developing. But for now, let's go to a couple of your views. You've been getting in touch a lot about what we've been speaking about. Wagatha Christie, Colin Rooney versus Rebecca Vardy. Many of you think it's all a bit, pointless, really.
Yes.
Raymond says this could have all been sorted out with Wayne and Jamie having a penalty shootout. That is Raymond's suggestion.
That's not bad. That's not
however,
bad.
despite the fact that many of you are saying that actually it's a waste of time and we shouldn't really be speaking about it, Linda here is actually quite defensive of Colin Rooney. She says Colin Rooney has every right to try and find out who had been selling stories about her. Why shouldn't she try and find out who she is? I'm no Wayne Rooney fan, but Colleen and Wayne have given lots to various charities locally, and I'm sure if Colleen does come out with any money, she will donate it to charity. Well, I think she's the defendant. I don't think she's can get any money. I don't. Rebecca Vardy's the defendant.
Colleen Rooney, I think.
Yeah. One of those. Basically, she's not the one who's going to be awarded the money.
No. Right, so just very quickly, Paul has been in touch about the nib that we did earlier, the short story that we did earlier about women potentially being given days off work for their periods. He says, I think it's a good idea to give us chaps a midlife crisis day off from work so that we can go and browse sports car showrooms or purchase a Harley Davidson or clothing that would suit a 20-year-old. And there we go. So that was good stuff. All right, Paul, thank you very much. Anyway, after the break, Finland and Sweden have both agreed to join NATO. So what will Putin's response be amid reports that his invasion of Ukraine slowed to a snail's pace? We'll be joined by a British military titan, so don't go anywhere.
Good morning. It's 11:34. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date on GB News. Boris Johnson is holding emergency talks with Northern Ireland's leaders today in a bid to break the Stormont deadlock. The Prime Minister's threatened to override parts of the Northern Ireland Protocol through new legislation in Westminster, despite warnings from the EU that could breach international law. The Assembly's been plunged into crisis in the wake of local elections, with the DUP refusing to join a devolved government. They say that's in protest over post-Brexit trading arrangements and the protocol, which the Irish Foreign Minister has said today must remain. McDonald's says it started the process to sell its business in Russia. The fast food giant closed all of its restaurants there in March, having operated in the country for 30 years. McDonald's says the humanitarian crisis in Ukraine has meant it's no longer tenable to continue business in Russia. Police will be able to stop and search people without reasonable grounds if they're in an area where they expect serious violence. The Home Secretary has permanently lifted previous police restrictions as part of the government's strategy to tackle violent crime. Police will be able to preemptively search for weapons before they're potentially used in a crime. Sweden will send diplomats to Turkey today in an attempt to overcome their objections to the Scandinavian nation joining NATO. Applications for new membership require unanimous approval from all existing NATO members. Sweden is expected to make a formal bid today, ending 73 years of internal opposition to the move. Finland confirmed yesterday it would also be applying for membership. A statue of Baroness Margaret Thatcher has been egged less than 2 hours after being erected in her hometown in Lincolnshire. A protester was seen throwing eggs at the memorial shortly after it was lowered into place in Grantham yesterday. No arrests have been made. The Queen received a standing ovation on the last day of the Royal Windsor Horse Show. She was there for a star-studded celebration of her Platinum Jubilee in the grounds of Windsor Castle. Her Majesty made a couple of appearances at the horse show last week, her first public outing since March, having missed the state opening of Parliament because of mobility issues. You're up to date here on GB News. We're on your TV, online and DAB+ radio.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound is 1.22 to the dollar, 1.17 to the euro, and the price of gold currently stands at £1,474.06 per ounce.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for physical investment.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here. You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle, and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, it's 11:39 and this is To The Point with me, Mercy Moroki, and Patrick Christie on GB News Live on your TV, online and radio.
Right, OK, so now, in case you haven't heard, I am raising money for a great cause. I'm raising money for Mind, which is a mental health charity, and so far we've got £11,448 in that kitty, and thank you so much to everybody who, in these particular times, especially very, very tricky times financially, like we're all penny pinching at the moment, I'm sure, who have dug deep in their pockets. Some of you just £5, some of you say just £5, some of you £900 one person managed to donate. We are trying to get to about 50k. I've got about another month, 2 months really left on this, because I'm going to be shedding the best part of a stone in the next 3 weeks. Yes, that's right. And then performing live on stage with the Dream Boys. But more than that, we're going to be joining as well Nathan Dunn, who's a friend of the show. He's walking barefoot from John O'Groats to Land's End. We'll be doing a bit with him. And yes, so if you can, it's justgiving.com/fundraising/challenge Christie's. Every little helps people, so it would be great if you could.
In fact, we're £150 up on that total that Patrick just quoted. So lots of you are still donating, and thank you so much for doing so. Let's try and get to 12,000 if we can. Well, we haven't got long left of the show, but thanks for everybody who has been donating anyway.
Just to fill you all in about the cause of it, behind it all, you know, obviously we're doing a couple of weird and wacky things. I'm losing weight and then stripping, and I suppose you could argue that Nathan Dunn's thing isn't too weird and wacky, but I mean, walking barefoot from John O'Groats to Land's End is a bit extreme. But really, it's all for mental health, OK? It's all for the charity Mind. There's a massive mental health crisis in this country at the moment. There's also a massive mental health crisis, not just when it comes to men committing suicide, but with children. And I personally looked at it and thought, you know what? The way that we handled this pandemic, I think, could desecrate children's mental health in this country for an entire generation. And every little bit that goes to the charity Mind, the justgiving.com/fundraising/challenge Christie's could help with things like child suicide, child mental health, male suicide, etc. And, of course, as well, female mental health issues as well. So please do give generously if you can. One more time, justgiving.com/fundraising/Challenge Christie's.
Yes, now the leaders of Finland and Sweden have both confirmed that they intend to join NATO in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Finland shares an 800-mile border with Russia and has remained militarily non-aligned for 75 years.
Well, Swedish Prime Minister Magdalena Andersson said joining the alliance was best for Sweden's and the Swedish people's security. But it does come as the latest Ministry of Defence briefing reveals that Russia may have lost a third of its forces since the start of the invasion.
Yes, well, what does this mean for the alliance, and is there a possibility Russia will actually respond with further escalation? Well, we're glad to be joined now by Major General Tim Cross, who served for over 30 years, including in the Balkans, where he commanded the British contingent of a NATO-led stabilisation force, which is quite the mouthful. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. There's quite an irony, isn't there, in that Russia was hoping to sort of destabilise NATO, or to at least make sure Ukraine did not become involved with NATO. And in invading Ukraine, what he's done seems to have actually bolstered NATO.
Yeah, it does. There's no doubt about that. And he badly miscalculated. And how much of that is his own personal view and how much of it is a result of being briefed by military and other people around him, none of us will know. Putin carries a lot of baggage with him over the whole collapse of the Soviet Union and his own views on NATO and so on. And it was interesting in his speech, the Victory Day speech, that he concentrated more on NATO than on Ukraine. But there's no doubt he has badly miscalculated. And it's really quite a big sea change for Finland in particular to join NATO. Sweden has been a partner in many ways. We've also done exercises with Finland, but that is a big change. There's other countries that are still neutral, like Austria and Ireland. None of those two have made any moves, I don't think. But it's a big change, and it's definitely a post-Cold War, the end of the post-Cold War years that we've thought about over the last 20, 30 years.
One question it raises is how Putin might actually respond to this. I just wanted your insights on what you think his response will be, because it will be obviously unnerving for him and his generals that this is taking place.
Yeah, I think the bilateral that Boris Johnson signed with both Sweden and Finland recently, and remember they're not NATO members yet. It has to be agreed by all the NATO members, and Turkey is pushing back a little for all sorts of reasons. There's Kurdish refugees in Sweden in particular that Turkey doesn't like, and they may be trying to get one or two concessions before they agree to the two joining. But the security is a security agreement. It's broader than just defence. So security includes things like energy security. It includes cyber and other non-lethal attacks. So how will he respond? Well, I don't think there's any doubt he'll respond with a lot of, strong language and assertions that he will do all sorts of things. I don't think he can possibly respond with any military attack on anywhere else in NATO. I mean, he's not going to move into the Baltics or indeed Finland when he's struggling so much to deal with the Ukraine. So I don't think we need to worry about a military attack, but I don't think there's any doubt he could bring economic sanctions to bear on Finland in terms of stopping moving energy through. He could bring about some cyber attacks and other non-violent and non-military use of sanctions. I don't think he is not going to do nothing. I don't think there's any doubt about that. He undoubtedly feels very strongly about it. I think he has said, in fact, the Kremlin has said that this may mean that they may deploy more tactical nuclear weapons. Again, that's a real serious issue, and I don't think he'll use them personally, but nonetheless, there'll be a lot of that sort of language.
What's Putin's way out of this, then? How does he come out of this with saving some face? He needs to be able to go back to the Russian people and claim some form of victory somewhere. So, given what's going on at the minute, Donbass region, for example, even there, things have allegedly slowed to a snail's pace. The massive losses, the massive levels of casualties, etc., etc., etc. What is his way out here?
There's no easy way out, and I don't think he's going to pull away from this very quickly. So I'm afraid this is going to drag on a long time. Now, we've seen a lot of media reports about this failed river crossing, for example, which is clearly encouraging. River crossing is actually one of the most difficult military operations you can do. So in a way, it's not surprising that it failed. But what's interesting is the way that the Ukrainians were able to bring to bear a lot of their combat power and take it out so effectively, take out the Soviet or the Russian attack so effectively. They are still making progress in the east. We mustn't get too complacent here. And Ukraine is suffering, taking their own casualties. Obviously, their equipment and weapons are being used up at a pretty fair rate, and we are replacing some of those. But I'm not convinced that Russia is going to fail, in inverted commas, as in stop carrying on with these attacks. Now, if they don't go well, Putin has got options. He can declare this to be a war. He can call up a heck of a lot of conscripts, so he can increase the size of his military substantially. And although they have taken serious casualties, you can narrow the scale, the size of the front. You can put in attacks elsewhere, and there are lots of options he can play with here. So I'm not convinced this is going to end quickly. I don't think Putin is going to walk away from it quickly. And if we back him into a corner, then the dangers of things like tactical nuclear weapons become even more serious.
Well, why is it that the Ukrainians appear to have made fewer military blunders than the Russians? Is it because it's easier to defend what is, let's be honest, a rather large patch of land than it is to attack it?
Yeah, there's certainly truth in that. Don't forget the Ukrainians have been fighting for 8 years in the eastern region, so they've got used to defending. They've got some good defensive positions there and so on. But yeah, defending is easier. One of the military maxims, is that if you're on the offensive, you're attacking, you need a ratio 3 to 1 against the defending forces. And obviously, if you're dug in good positions and well-prepared positions, it's easier. Now, that said, Ukrainians have had some good training, and we, the UK, have been involved in training the Ukrainians for quite a while before this assault in February. We've obviously provided them with a lot of kit, and so have other people. The Russians' invasion has gone badly wrong. There's no doubt about that. And there's all sorts of issues that we've talked about over the last few weeks, but their logistics, their commander control. They don't have a professional cadre, as we do in the British military, of senior NCOs. The heartbeat, the centre of gravity of the British military in many ways is what we call the Sans Mess. The young junior NCOs, the senior NCOs, very seasoned senior NCOs, warrant officers. Throughout my career, I had brilliant warrant officers and senior NCOs working for me. And without them, frankly, we wouldn't have been anywhere near as capable as we are. So they don't have the equivalent of that. So when things begin to go wrong, the private soldiers, the junior NCOs fall away. They don't have the people to gather them together and maintain the momentum. And a lot of their young officers have not been doing a good job here. So there's all sorts of issues. The overall campaign plan has been very poor too, I have to say. Sorry, we're trying to dive in.
Well, Major General Tim Cross, thank you so much for joining us. Do join us again to talk about this. Obviously, not an issue that's not going away anytime soon. That was really interesting. It's all very complicated, isn't it? But, as you say, and as Major General Tim points out there, Russia has embarrassed itself. It massively miscalculated, didn't it? And as a result, it is being embarrassed on the world stage. And, Putin is clearly not going to be pleased with how this whole operation has gone. But that's what we would like to see, I suppose, this operation on the part of the Russian forces fail catastrophically, and for the Ukrainian people to get back to some form of normality.
Yes, indeed. And in fact, I don't know how to say this live on air, but we're quite looking forward to meeting a particular chap today. We've had on a few times on this show. We'll be joining you on your screens a bit later. Alexei Goncharenko, who is a Ukrainian MP and has been the mayor in Odessa. He's actually in London now. You'll have seen him on your TV screens. He's done some awesome work for us, actually, reporting live from the site of a bomb blast, for example, telling us that he'd kill Putin with his own bare hands and all this stuff. He's been a very, very brave reporter for us, as well as, of course, a serving MP in Ukraine from over there. And it's our pleasure to say that he's over here at the minute, so we're going to be meeting him a little bit later on. But anyway, now our final story of the day. Have you ever longed for more holiday time, more time off work to rest, recharge, to spend time with loved ones?
Yes, well, Goldman Sachs has announced that it will allow senior bankers to take as many holidays as they like under a new flexible vacation scheme. So the firm won't cap the number of paid leave days, and managing directors at the bank can take off when they need a vacation. So essentially it's unlimited paid annual leave for bankers, because we all know that they don't make enough money, do they?
No, they don't. They're one letter away from the reality. But these changes came into effect at the beginning of this month and include a mandatory 15 days off, including one consecutive week for all employees. Well, anyway, let's just talk to Amanda Lennon now, employment lawyer and HR director. Amanda, thank you very much for joining us. So, feasibly then, surely not. If I'm a banker, I can't take every single day of the year off work, can I?
Well, this is where the premise comes in. Goldman Sachs isn't the first employer to introduce this type of vacation policy. But for me, there are two issues. The first is managing this. As you say, can bankers take as much leave as they want? Well, the reality is that they will probably be able to take more leave than they could in more blocks than currently. But the issue is, how does their absence get resourced by the remaining staff working in their team? So that's the first thing. The second thing is that these types of policies, if they are only applied to certain levels of the business, can create a them and us perception among other workers. So if it only applies to the managing director level, then you're going to have an issue further down the business with other employees looking at those people thinking, I work equally as hard, why shouldn't I have the benefit of that leave as well? There is one other point that really concerns me about a policy like this. I think you need to look at the root cause, and according to the reports, Goldman Sachs is introducing this policy to counteract the burnout that employees are experiencing because they work such long hours at the bank. If that's the case, having an unlimited leave policy doesn't address that root cause issue, in my view. That's then about resourcing, well-being. Why are those workers working such long hours? Is it because there aren't enough staff on the ground? That type of thing.
Yeah, isn't it the case as well that in a sector such as the financial sector, which is incredibly competitive, I mean, just if you look at the number of people trying to get into that career from university, you can understand how competitive it is. Isn't the reality is that people just aren't going to take annual leave because their bosses will probably just frown upon them, say, you're not working hard enough, and there's, you know, Joe Bloggs over there is willing to work twice as hard as you, so I'm going to promote him instead.
I absolutely agree. I think one thing that needs to be considered is, what is the culture of the organisation where this policy is being introduced? If it is the culture, as you say, that the work is just going to be pushed on other people, and the person taking the leave is then going to be under pressure to keep up with their workload when they come back, that policy just isn't going to work in practice. And whilst it might partly be introduced because of the war on talent and to attract and retain people, it's going to backfire if that's how it plays out in practice.
Good stuff. All right, well, look, Amanda, thank you so much. Great to have your insight there. Amanda Lennon, employment lawyer and HR director as well. I can see that being a bit of a minefield, but I wonder, a bit like you, Mercy, whether or not it's a way of weeding out some of the employees in a very competitive industry. You start getting people who are sunning themselves in the Seychelles 5 times a year, and you think, well, hang on a minute, so-and-so's just in a position under them, you know, could actually be putting in a lot more work.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I haven't, over the last year, I haven't taken annual leave that was just sort of from recreation. It's usually child-related or whatever. And to be honest, I think bosses probably do look kindly. I'm not saying my boss is here, but I'm saying bosses in general probably do look kindly on people who perhaps don't always use up their annual leave, who aren't always desperate to get away from work. And sadly, that's just the reality of it. So I think even if bankers were given unlimited, they're bankers because they want to earn a lot of money and they want to rise up in their career. So I assume they wouldn't really be taking that much time off.
No, I agree. Well, anyway, right, OK, so loads of you have, of course, been getting in touch about something else. Wednesday, that's right, our Wednesday show. Once again, we're handing the show over to you. We want you to tell us what to talk about. We want to do the stories that really matter to you.
Yes, you've already been getting in touch to let us know what you want us to cover this Wednesday and what questions you think need answering and who we should be talking to. And carry on emailing those ideas at the email to the point at gbnews.uk, because we're going to collect them all up tomorrow, and the show on Wednesday is going to be completely curated by you.
It will indeed. So anyway, that's it from us here at To The Point. Thank you, everyone who's been getting in touch. Thank you, everyone who's been tuning in and watching us as well, of course, online, listening to us on radio and getting in touch with us on Twitter as well. But don't go away, because up next is the wonderful Gloria De Piero with The Briefing. Make sure you tune in for that.
Hello, I'm Alex Deakin with your latest weather updates. A warm and humid day for most today. Some big thundery showers around this afternoon. And across much of Scotland, it's going to stay grey and wet. There's low pressure lurking in the Atlantic, but it's just kind of milling around here and throwing up warm and humid air from the south. Hence why we could see some big thunderstorms this afternoon, particularly over Wales and the Midlands, and then drifting northwards into Northern Ireland and parts of northern England. Some very heavy rain is possible in a short space of time. Meanwhile, the southern half of England turning largely dry this afternoon. We'll keep a lot of cloud and outbreaks of rain across Scotland. Quite a cold day in eastern Scotland, but elsewhere quite warm and humid, particularly if the sun pops out. Temperatures could get up to 23, maybe 24 Celsius, but still some very heavy showers around. Not great on the roads for this evening's rush hour. That's the M6 and the M5 in particular, but those thundery showers should ebb away. We'll always keep some cloud and rain across northern Scotland, but for most it becomes dry overnight. It's a little misty in places, temperatures holding up in double figures, so another pretty warm night. Notice out west, though, there is another band of rain. That's going to edge in during Tuesday, spread across Northern Ireland, eventually into Wales and southwest England, and it'll turn wet during tomorrow afternoon in western parts of Scotland as well. Elsewhere, for many places, it's a fine day, staying quite misty and murky around the Northern Isles, but quite a bit of sunshine over central and eastern parts, and a warmer day.